Welcome students. Myself, Dr. Shriya Rawat, working as Assistant Professor in the Department of VPE, College of Veterinary Animal Sciences, SPPUAT Meerut. Today we will be discussing about Food Quality Control Laboratory, a profitable venture. Topic of today's presentation is Quality Control Laboratory, a promising venture. So what is an entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is an individual who identifies the opportunity, after studying the markets, he invests the available resources to create long-term gain and wealth. In today's time, when government jobs are rare and private work there is cutthroat competition in the private world, there is need to create our own opportunities. In this context, we will be dealing with setting up a food safety laboratory, how it can help us create wealth. Let's identify the need. What is the need? The most vital need of mankind is food. Not only food, but safe food. This need was identified by the UN and is part of the is highlighted by the first three sustainable development goals, which are no poverty, no hunger, and good health, all of which are related to food, and that too safe food. All this is only possible if we keep a check on the food chain. Before going into the details of this, let's take a look at the Indian food scenario. This food scenario is not limited to India but is the present condition throughout the world. We are migrating from a cereal-based diet to high-value and perishable products like milk, meat, fish, which are more prone to spoilage and health food safety issues. With more women being a part of the workforce, families have got higher disposable income with them, which which is cause an increase in the demand for ready to eat, ready to cook, or semi-prepared food items. Also, increase tendency towards eating out is another practice, which again highlights the safety concern in the handling, processing, and packaging of food. Another concern in the food market is the globalization of the food chain. There is increased trade, which also calls for more stringent standards with regards to our food. Pesticide, antibiotics, veterinary drug residue, heavy metal, mycotoxins, they are become a common part of our food thanks to mass production of mass production. Just before going into why we need a lab, let's see what is the burden of foodborne disease. Actually, it is very difficult to calculate the burden of foodborne diseases. Since foodborne diseases have a wide spectrum, they vary from microbial pathogens to chemical to physical agents. And finding out the number of reported cases is very less as compared to the actual number of individuals affected. But still, WHO Foodborne Disease Epidemiology Reference Group, they collected data based on 2010 statistics, and they've come up with estimation of the burden of foodborne disease. They have found out that 1 in 10 people fall ill every year because of eating contaminated food. The most effective group is children less than 5 years of age, which contribute to around 43% of the disease burden. The highest disease burden is from Africa, which is followed by Southeast Asia. The burden is only calculated for 31 foodborne pathogens, which contribute to 20% of the burden of the foodborne disease. 80% of the foodborne disease are of unknown etiology. With regards to India, every year we get around 100 million cases of foodborne diseases, and 1 in 12 people fall ill because of such diseases, which as another 1.12 million people die, and around 8 million disability adjusted life years are attributed to the burden of foodborne disease alone in India. This is just a depiction of what kind of foodborne illnesses we have, what are the illnesses, how many people get ill, how many deaths, and the total disability adjusted life years. We'll just discuss what are disability adjusted life years. Maximum is due to the diarrheal pathogens, followed by invasive helminths and the chemicals. This is a comparative health burden, which is according to a WHO statistics, where the top three killers, tuberculosis, HIV, and malaria, foodborne disease are almost comparable to these three top killers, especially in case of China, where 272 disability adjusted life years are lost per 0.1 million people. When we want to find out the burden of foodborne diseases, it is primarily due to it has three types of implication. Implication to the household or the consumer, to the industry and the public health sector. Households suffer due to disease on account of self-protection, medical care, loss of productivity, and loss of the quality of life. The food industry suffers due to recall. Recall are very common in the food industry. Cleanup. Sometimes the whole plant gets shut down because of some minor food safety issue. Litigations can happen, the reputation will suffer, and they also have to go for regulatory compliance. This is major amount of the revenue is lost because of this. Public health sector, they suffer because the government has to divert much needed funds to disease surveillance, regulatory enforcement, outbreak response, recall, inspection, regulatory enhancement, etc. Economic impact of foodborne disease is around 110 million US dollars due to loss of productivity alone in low and medium income countries, out of which 49% is attributed by India and China alone. India alone suffers losses to the tune of 15 billion every year. Also important to note is that all these data do not take into account losses due to pesticide and antibiotic residue, which are responsible for a number of cases of cancer, infertility, ovarian dysfunction, and prostate cancer in human. Another important uh, aspect of the foodborne diseases is loss to the industry. We already discussed. Most of us will remember in 2015, Maggi was recalled from the Indian market due to presence of lead. The Nestle India suffered loss of to the tune of around 500 crores because of this. The USDA reported around 62 recalls in the year 2023 in meat and poultry products alone. So this is a huge economic loss to the industry. Keeping all this in mind, we come to the present topic, establishment of food safety lab. FSSAI, that is the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India, was established under the Food Safety and Standard Act 2006 by the Government of India to regulate and monitor aspects of the food safety. So the Food Safety and Standard Authority of India, from time to time, they have come up with guidelines, standards, and manuals. They've also come up with guidelines for setting up basic functional food analysis laboratory. So we have documents in the public domain which we can use for establishing our laboratory. Before setting up a food safety laboratory, what we need to keep in mind is what type of laboratory do we want to target. We want to target the general, a food testing laboratory generally has four aspects. We have the general parameters, we have the nutritional parameters, we have the food additives and contaminants, And also, we go for microbiological testing. In general parameters, generally moisture content, ash, total solids, uric acid, if there is presence of rodent hair, etc., is tested. Under the nutritional parameters, crude fiber, total fat, total protein, amino acids, um, vitamin, cholesterol, etc., are studied. For food additives and contaminants, we have color, we have antioxidants, preservative, artificial sweeteners, heavy metals, mycotoxins, veterinary drugs, residue, etc. In case of microbiology, what we're going to test is the total plate count, presence of coliforms, yeast and molds, specific pathogens like E. coli, Listeria, Vibrio, Salmonella, and E. coli. The list is still long. We are just discussing. So, based on which parameter we want to target, we have to set our laboratory. We have to do a market survey of what product, what commodity. Food is a very broad term. We have plant-based food, we have animal-based food, and animal-based food, we have milk, we have meat. So, we have to decide what kind of products we are going to target. Market survey is very important. Where we are establishing our laboratory, do we have a market of that product over there? Is milk available? We want to set up a milk testing facility. Is milk available in the vicinity or not? Then, what kind of tests, what basic services we are going to provide? Are we going to do all the tests in-house, or we are going to outsource some of them? Then we also have to think about the finance. We are going to self-finance, or we are going to take loan from the bank, or we have to target some other agency, some government agency. Then another factor that has to be considered is partners. Are we going to run the solely the laboratory, or we are going to take up partners? Also, one point that I missed in finance is, if we are going to, it is always better not to use our money and take finance, because maybe when we are submitting a proposal, people try to review it and they can come up with some flaw. If we are going to finance ourselves, then maybe we overlook that deficiency in our project. So we must try to get some finance from outside so that our proposal is thoroughly checked. Location, we have to see if there is accessibility, there is availability of adequate water, light, industrial phase light, and uninterrupted power. Then is there facility for scaling up? Initially, if you're going to start up a small laboratory, then do we have adequate space for scaling up the facility? Under the financial assistance, the Ministry of Food Processing Industry, they are providing assistance to government and government, semi-government, universities, and even the private sector for setting up an upgradation of food testing and food quality control laboratory. This comes under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Sampada Yojana. Under this scheme, if there is a government agency, then 100% of the expenditure for equipments is covered. But for private, since we are talking about setting up an enterprise, then around 50% of in general areas and 70% in difficult areas, and for SC and ST candidate, this much expenditure for equipments, and 2% of the cost of equipments, or 15 lakh, or whichever is lower, towards civil work, fixture, furniture, is provided by the government. So we can avail the facilities provided by the Ministry of Food Processing Industry for getting finance. Another thing to consider while opening a food laboratory is that accreditation. Accreditation, we have to get a facility accredited within 6 months by NABL. You can get accreditation by FSI, by APIDA, by EIC, by BIS. There are various agencies. So that is also important. What are the general steps in setting up a food testing laboratory? The first thing is selection of site or location where we want to set up our laboratory. Then developing an organizational structure. An organizational structure as to what, who will head the laboratory, that has to be seen. Selection of analysis to be performed. What kind of test we are going to do? We are going to target the general parameters, we're going to target the microbiology. In microbiology, what pathogens we will be targeting? If we are targeting the additives, will we be covering pesticide? We have a number of veterinary drugs, more than 100. So which drugs we are going to target? So all that has to be thought of before setting up the lab. Then we have to go for purchase of equipment and chemicals and selection of staff. After all that has been done, then we have to establish the standard operating procedures and also establish a quality assurance system. Since this lab will be working in the public domain, we also require to get accreditation through the various agencies which are providing accreditation. When we talk about the organizational setup, so organizational setup is headed by the chief food analyst. He will be a PhD in science, maybe it's chemistry, food science, microbiology, with experience of around 5 to 10 years in the food industry. Also, a qualified food analyst who has been working in the food industry for 15 years is eligible for this job. Under the chief food analyst, we have analytical staff, we have the administrative staff, and the support staff. Analytical staff will consist of the senior analysts, the junior analysts, the technical officers, the technical assistants who will help in the functioning of the lab, the technical functioning, the conducting of the test, etc. Then we have the administrative staff, and finally we have the support staff, which will be the lab attendant, technician for maintenance, etc. The FSSAI has also provided guidelines for a lab in the government domain, which is testing around 500 samples per month. The requirement of staff is around 41. The 41 individuals are required at max for running up a laboratory. This picture is, I've taken it from FSSAI document 2021. This is the laboratory setup. What are the general building requirements and design? Some general consideration like availability of good foundation, electricity, generally 300 lux is required. Then potable water should be there, uninterrupted power supply should be there. They are the primary requirements for setting up a laboratory. Also, ventilation should be proper. Fume hoods should be there because we are also going to deal with chemicals. Then when we come to the main design, first the most important point is the sample reception and receipt and registration area. The sample registration and receipt area is where an individual will come and deposit his sample. So this area should have authorized access. Then there should be facility for storage, refrigeration, as well as a -20 facility. Then there should be computer for logging in the data, etc. This is followed by the sample storage room. The sample storage room is where the samples are stored, and in this generally we have both refrigeration as well as -20 facility. Also, this should be air conditioned. There are certain specific requirements for this. This is followed by the primary processing and subsampling area. This is where the primary samples are processed, and similar to the earlier two requirements, we have storage facility here. Apart from that, we have weighing balance and certain specific equipments for this. Then we have uh, areas for chemical examination and microbiological examination, followed by storage area also. This is another the picture depicting. This is also taken from FSSAI 2021, and this shows a diagram, layout of a laboratory. We have the reception area. We have the sample receipt area, the sampling area, the instrumentation room. We have nutritional evaluation room. We have proximate and gravimetric evaluation room, and a room for glassware washing and drying. We have instrument laboratory. So all these areas are, we can change the position as per our requirement. Then when we come to a microbiology lab should have specific access. There are certain requirements for the lab, like we should have a wash area, we should have an incubation area should be separate, culture area should be separate. So there's particular requirements which have been mentioned in the guidelines given by FSSAI. Following this is storage. Storage is very essential, where we are going to store our chemicals in order not to, so that no safety issue occurs. So we require a proper storage area. What is important in the storage area, that chemicals should not be stored more than 6 months, like corrosive chemicals and all. Then another thing to be kept in mind is that we don't stack things. The chemicals are stored at eye level to avoid any accident. Then we also have lab personnel. We have a laboratory and personal safety. That is another issue that has to be dealt with very seriously in case of laboratories, because minor accidents can occur. So with regards to this, various measures, safety measures like fume hoods are there, then we have fire extinguishers, then some electrical safety parameters are also to be followed. Specific guidelines related to lab furniture are also given by FSSAI. Waste disposal. When we talk about waste disposal, in case of waste disposal, we have two kinds of waste. We have the chemical waste and we have the biological waste or microbiological waste. In case of microbiological waste, we have to follow the biomedical waste rules, which are how we're going to dispose of, in which kind of bag. For chemical, specific guidelines are also given. We should not, we have different kinds of chemicals. Some chemicals can be washed off in the drain. Some have to be, they cannot be, like, which are not soluble in water. They cannot be washed off. Then we also have a laboratory information maintenance system. This system is in place so that all the data pertaining to which sample is coming at what time, proper labeling is followed when the sample was received, what was the result, and when it was dispatched. All the information is maintained in one site. For this, we have the lab information maintenance system. This this is a list of uh, most of the equipment which are required for chemical analysis. We have pH meter, we have balance, we have protein analyzer, fiber analyzer, turbidometer, viscometer, etc. Some major equipments which are required for a microbiological lab, these are like BOD incubator, we have microscopes, we have laminar airflow, we have biosafety cabinet class 2, then we should have autoclaves for proper disposal, etc. So these are for the microbiological lab, and there's some general equipment which will be used for both chemical and microbiological laboratory. So this is a comprehensive list. Depending upon our resources and what kind of test we are going to perform in a laboratory, we can decrease and increase the number of sample equipments. This was about what are the needs and how we can establish a laboratory, where we're going to get the funding. But before going into this venture, let's look at what are the major challenges. First major challenge is about the legislations. We do have some rules. FSSAI is doing commendable job in this sector, but still we don't have very concrete legislations, and there is very poor enforcement of these legislations. The number of food safety laboratories is per million. Compared to the population, it is very less. There is lack of trained manpower, people who are trained in handling, because many of the equipments are quite sophisticated. especially for chemical examination. So there we require trained manpower, and if trained manpower is lacking, then maybe we will not get good results. Then we have outdated infrastructure. Though the government is giving funds for upgradation of labs, but infrastructure is not to the at par, and sometimes this one equipment gets out of order, then it is very difficult to repair. Financial constraint is a major issue with regards to food safety laboratories. Another thing is multiple accreditation agencies. We can take accreditation from NABL, we can take from FSCI, we can take from BIS, APADA, EIC. So what the problem is that the accreditation process is time consuming, it also requires money. So instead of a number of agencies, if only one, we have a single window for all this, then the work can be less challenging. And sometimes one thing which may be a challenge for the food industry, but that is a plus for new people who people, yeah, people who want to open up their enterprise, is the sample load is relatively high. In some laboratories, the sample load is so high that the results are pending for a very long time. So we have to think in this direction that there is lots of scope in this sector and we can use that. What is the way forward? We all know that food safety is a burning issue. Everywhere people want safe food, not just food. Food security is not for today. Today we want food as well as safe food. So the demand for food testing is going to go up in the near future. It is going up right now. It is going to expand many folds in the near future. Also added to this is international trade. We are dealing with international trade. We have to make up our products that meet the international standards. So we require in-house testing of the product during production. After production also we require testing. Government agencies are providing loan for upgradation or setting up of laboratories. This is another plus point. Government is providing loans, so we can think in the direction. Also, the government labs are working in PPP mode. In some of the laboratories in Delhi, FSSI laboratories, National Referral Laboratories, they are also working in the PPP mode along with Thermo and Merck. They are providing assistance for upgradation of the laboratory. Also, FSSI has come up with food safety on wheels. This is an additional benefit. People who don't want to go into setting up their own lab, they can think of the small thing, food safety on wheels. This is an initiative of the FSSAI where a vehicle is installed with general testing facilities, and the product can be tested at the doorsteps. This is a mobile testing lab actually. Also, setting up of notified and accredited laboratories can be a lucrative venture for people who want to go into this field.
So students, I hope you understood the importance of food safety in today's time and how we can utilize this aspect about food safety for establishing a food laboratory and gain from them. Thank you.